Today, I'm going to share something personal with you, something that changed my life completely. It's about sleep apnea. Now, my whole life, I've always prided myself on working hard and working a lot. Back in my commercial fishing days, back in my early 20s, I'd go 2 or 3 days in a row, literally 24 hours a day, no sleep. And I took pride in that. I thought it was admirable, right? And later, in my late 20s and early 30s, I moved from physical labor into sales and business. And I kept the same mindset. I was up early, out late. In the real estate world, I was a real estate agent, real estate broker for a number of years. 16-hour days were not uncommon. Do that day after day after day. And I loved it. I truly loved the work, and I took pride in getting my 40 hours in by lunch on Wednesday, right? But somewhere in the late 80s, early 90s, I was in my mid 30s, late 30s, and early 40s, and things started to change a little bit. I began snoring more, and my wife Lori, she made sure I was very aware of that. Started complaining a bit about it, and looking back, that was probably the beginning of the early onset, I guess, of my sleep apnea. I knew it was becoming a problem. I was a bit bullheaded, right? I'm a little stubborn. And I figured, you know what? I'm just going to fix it. I'll lose a little weight. I'll tough it out, that kind of thing. But I didn't. And it only got worse. And by the late 90s and early 2000s, it had become really severe. I'd wake up exhausted and stay exhausted. My memory was fading. My focus was just not there. Everything felt like it took double the effort just to get anything done. I was living really in a fog. And what's really weird, and I can remember this conversation on an airplane that I had with a woman. She was sitting next to me, and she was about my age. And as we were talking, she told me that she had lost her husband to sleep apnea. It killed him. I thought, oh my goodness, I never heard of such a thing, and I knew, or I really suspected that I had this. That was in the mid '90s, and I still didn't go and get the sleep test. I mean, how dumb was that? By 2002, I couldn't even sleep in a bed. I had to sleep upright in a chair. I did that for years, and I was doing that just so I could breathe a little bit better, but it was still terrible. And one day that year, I think it was somewhere. Yeah, it was 2002, and I was in a business meeting down in California with my CEO group. And the guy I was meeting with, he had stepped out to use the restroom. And when he came back, I was asleep at the conference table. Embarrassing, right? Shortly after that, I started to fall asleep at red lights. I'd be driving, and I'd pull up to a traffic stop, and I'd just nod out. And my wife and daughter pleaded with me, go to the doctor. You've got to get this looked at. And they got to a point where they no longer wanted to drive with me. I was a danger, and not only that, I was in danger, right? It was horrible. I just a little FYI, a little aside here. I later learned that drowsy driving, right? People that are driving while they shouldn't be because they're so sleepy, that's responsible for about 100,000 crashes every year. That's a huge number of automobile accidents in the U.S. every year. 100,000, 1,500 fatalities every year. So again, it's something that's just crazy. And I can't, looking back, I can't even believe it was me that was so boneheaded on this topic. But I'll tell you what happened. I started getting some edema in my ankles and my legs and my feet. And then one day, I remember I was with my daughter and my wife at a singing competition that Danica was in, and I had one of the wristwatches that had the little snap on it, and it wouldn't fit off over my hand. My wrists and my hand had swollen up with the edema, man, and that scared me, and it freaked me out totally. And I decided, okay, enough is enough, right? And I made an appointment with the doctor, and they doctor, of course, referred me to a sleep specialist. And again, this was in 2005, 20 years ago. And back then, it meant a overnight sleep study at the hospital. And they hooked me up to all this stuff, put all these little deals all over me to measure waves. I don't know what all they were doing. But the results, I know, were shocking, right? I had 111 obstructive respiratory events, they call it, 87 apneas, and 24 what they call hypoapneas. And so my respiratory disturbance index, what they call it, I have all the reports for this, was 78.4 events per hour. More than one every minute I stopped breathing. I mean, it's insane. I mean, it's scary and it's so dumb to look back on. But there's no wonder that I felt only about half alive, right? I mean, I was only half alive. Then they put me I'm at this sleep clinic over here at the hospital, and then they put the CPAP on me, and and it's this contraption. It's all weird, but they fitted the mask and they adjusted the pressure, and I was out like a light, right? I mean, I was just out. No more obstructive events, they call it, and I reached REM sleep. They can tell this during the study, and it had to be the first time I had had REM sleep, the REM sleep, for years, maybe 10 years. I know, an incredible long time. And I woke up there at the hospital that morning, and it was like one of those Claritin commercials, where everything looks good, then the filter goes off and it's ta-da, the blue skies and the white clouds. I just couldn't even believe it. This is what it feels like to be alive. It was amazing. And of course, I continued to use the CPAP every night and I'll tell you this, every day or every morning for the first 2 weeks, every single day, I'd wake up feeling better than I had felt the day before. I was clearer, more sharp. I mean, it just took that time to get back to what most of us would consider normal and hopeful again, right? It was phenomenal. It's just unbelievable to look back on. And then so that 2005, over the next few years, I lost some pounds. In 2009, I had lost 100 pounds, and for a while there, 2009, 2010, into even early 2011, I was able to sleep without the CPAP machine. The apneas had stopped. And unfortunately, the weight crept back, and so did the sleep apnea. And I was back on the CPAP machine, which was fine. I mean, it still worked great, mentally sharp. It was nice to be off, but nice that I had it right there available when I needed it. And I just wanted to bring this all up because, in hindsight, as I sit and just evaluate my life and think of some of the dumb mistakes I've made. I've done some good things, but man, this was not one of them. Finally getting the test, getting the machine, that was good, but boy, it took me way too long. So if you're dealing with sleep apnea or suspect that you might be or know someone who is, don't try to tough it out, right? Don't be stubborn like I was. Just go get tested. It is so simple, so easy. Doesn't hurt. There's no problem doing it. And then get treated. And today there are many, many more options than ever before, right? In addition to the CPAP machine, they have dental appliances and surgeries and all these different ways you can get treated. I'm okay with the machine. I don't love it, of course, but it works. And so I haven't pursued any of the other options. Maybe some point I will. I don't know. But anyway, the important thing here is that there were 10 years of my life, at least 10, maybe 15, that could have been much better if I had just taken care of this sooner. And like my old friend Jim Rohn used to say, right? There's two ways that we can learn, two types of people we can learn from, right? We want to learn from the people that know how to do things. We want to learn what to do. And then the people that don't know, right? We want to learn what not to do, what mistakes do people make. He can chalk this one up into what not to do file, or at least don't wait too long. Do it now. So if you suspect you have this, my encouragement would be check it out, get that sleep test. Now, the last sleep test I did, I've only done 2, but the only other one we did right at home. You put the stuff on, you do it in your own bed at your own home. So anyway, if you think you can relate, check it out, because I'm just 100% sure you'll feel so much better when you get that put behind you. All right, all for now.